All right, Orlando, I'm going to change over to you, and your monitor should light up. It should say, what do you now?
Presentation, but
okay, of your screen, do you see desktop? All right, I'm going to pause the recording. You see, all right, I'm going to move over. All right, now you see share my desktop.
Well, there would be like a green pull down. I don't see that.
I'm going to stop sharing. All right, hold on just a moment. I'm going to stop recording. Again, as you may have noticed, we had some technical difficulties. Thank you for your patience. If you would like to ask questions, you can ask that through the chat window or the Q&A panel. Just go up to the top of your screen where you see the green bar. That's a floating toolbar. Just go up to that, hover over. A menu will drop down, and you can choose chat and Q&A. And we will do our best to answer all of your questions. Just send them to me or to all participants. We will either interrupt Dr. Orlando or we will wait till the end, whichever seems most appropriate. But thank you for your time and your patience. Dr. Orlando.
And welcome to everyone. Please feel free to ask questions as we go. I think it's important to address those as you have them. We'll also have time for question and answers at the end. So you all are from all countries, so that's kind of exciting. Just want to give you a little information about where I am, what the temperature's like here today. We're going to talk about computer-assisted instruction for use with students with spectrum disorder. So the folks from asked me to review software to determine how it might be applicable to addressing the unique needs of individuals with autism spectrum disorder. And I'll say ASD to refer to that. And so I did that. I thought about, well, how do we use Classroom Suite? And I think it's really important that we address these useful characteristics using the based practices that have been effective for this population. And so in doing that, I looked at what were the evidence-based practices. And this is one for computer-assisted instruction, in which Classroom Suite would fall under that category. So what I've laid out how that Classroom Suite addresses each one of these. Some of that is in the software, and some of that is in teachers. So we'll walk through each one of those steps. There are 14 steps identified in computer-assisted instruction. And so, like I said, please feel free to ask questions as we go. Increase your knowledge of computer-aided instruction for students with autism and identify the ways that Classroom Suite can be used with this particular evidence-based practice. The question to you is, how is computer-aided instruction used for as an evidence-based protocol for addressing the needs of your students? You all can just sort of type into the chat window.
Message to Dr. Orlando. I have a couple. I have a 2 no's and a yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Great. So
and another no. Yes. Yeah. We utilize AAC, Clicker 6, Classroom Suite, Solo, Fast for Word, etc. 2 more and a no and another no. They're coming in. Another no, and another no.
Great, thank you all for sharing that. So about computer instruction and what is the research base around that, we look at studies and what has studies shown, and in order to be determined as an evidence-based practice, I think a particular practice would need to be shown to have consistent outcomes across studies in where participants and across researchers and across different locations. And so there are 24 of these have been identified for students with ASD, being one of them. I just wanted to add criteria for how that is determined, and for these studies that they have to meet in order for the research community to deem them as being evidence-based. If we look at computer-aided instruction, and what are the different strategies? So this was identified, and I have the reference here. And I'll give you, at the end, I'll give you a link to the course, so you can actually download these steps. To identify what is the individual's target objective for participating in this achieve through getting access to this particular computer program. So that's things to think about. Fortunately, Classroom Suite has identified in each one of their templates, whether it be early learning templates or the reading templates or the math templates, they've identified some specific targeted skills that the templates address. And so that's really helpful, I feel, for instructors to match the skill with the individual. Information about the particular instructional level, which can be helpful too. These are just examples from the early learning templates, the sorting and matching. These are the kinds of targeted objectives that are identified for that particular template. To you all is, which curriculum areas do you primarily address using computers to facilitate learning? Is it typically reading? Is it math? What are you particularly focused on? And you just type that into the chat window.
Across contents and grade levels, reading, math reading, language math, and math, reading, writing, and mathematics. Reading, writing, accommodations for complete assignments, math, communication.
All the content areas. Primarily reading is what I imagine that would be. So thank you for that. And that's I think, pretty typical about what we're seeing. So the second step in the computer-aided instruction is to collect baseline data. So this is a conversation I have with teachers. I spend a lot of time in classrooms doing professional development with teachers. And something that we talk about is how do we collect data, because teachers are so busy, and how can they manage to do that? So in the steps for computer-assisted instruction, it suggests that you collect this at least on 3 occasions. And these can be things like work samples. It doesn't have to be a data sheet that you develop specifically, but it can be work samples. Any sort of authentic assessment that might have conducted with a student. And but you want to collect data on across 3 times to look at the student working toward the particular skill that I'm going to use my computer-aided instruction to focus. Because we never don't use the computer to do instruction. We use that as a way to provide drill and practice for a student to enhance those skills. That's a really important component of that. Step would be to identify what are those technology supports that you might need. And so supports, or the teacher might need too. Those supports can be things that exist inside and outside of the classroom. So it could be the the school technology person that works for the school. It could be an agency person that works outside of the school who's going to provide some training and support for the school staff to use that computer and the software. Identify what are available computers and applications needed for the student to access the computer software. I think to think about what are the adaptations that are needed. Certainly, Classroom Suite has a variety of adaptations that can be made within the software, but this includes peripherals as well. So there are tools that need to be identified, such as a keyboard or switch or something like that. And identify the appropriate software. If software out there, the Classroom Suite would like to use their particular software, and there's certainly schools have access to a lot of software knowledge. I think it's to sort of cull through and see what's available that's going to address the needs of your students. Talk to those outside resources to gather additional things that might be helpful. So to select and install the computer software that does these things. One is teaches the targeted skill, and like I said, Classroom has identified skills within each template match your students' needs. The other two is appropriate. And a lot, because I have a lot of high school students and high school teachers that I work with, and some looking for software that addresses their needs, but also looking for something that is age appropriate. And so, fortunately, within the templates of Classroom Suite, even though it says a skill test, first through grade, be appropriate for that age level, the teacher can adapt the content something that's more age appropriate if necessary. Software should also be user-friendly with a clear progression. Every template within class has a progression built into it, certainly because teachers can, as they deem necessary, it may be for there to be a clear progression because you can go in there as the teacher and shift to the next objective for the student. Screen guides, and certainly Classroom Suite has icons that can allow the student to look again, to follow along to click the button. That as the teacher can always teach the student how to ask for help, whether it be raising their hand or using an output device or something like that. The second is learn the software and teach others, the student, how to use the software. There's data that suggests that students with disabilities spend a lot of time waiting instruction. I always recommend that teachers become fairly proficient in the software so that you're learning this with the student, that you have that knowledge when you come to the student and program out for them so they don't have to wait on instruction. The starting point that matches the student's interests and abilities, why it's so important to collect that baseline data in the beginning so you can identify this pretty efficiently. I know that sometimes when we start too low or too high, that can create problems for our students. And so baseline data can help them in the appropriate starting point. Analysis for each step in using the software is important. Sorry. The task analysis here, they're going to use the particular software. Yours would need to be a little more elaborate given your student needs. the students that I work with love being on the computer, and it is really challenging to transition them from not being on the computer. So, kind of issue before. So I recommend that transitioning to is also a desired activity, preferably something that's even more preferred than being on the computer. I put lunch here, but you can pick something else for your student that might be more appealing. You are using a systematic process for documenting your students' parts of their goals, and if so, what type of strategy are you using? Chat window.
Yes. From he says yes.
Okay. So, can any of you elaborate on what kind of process that you're using? Try to know what that acronym is for.
See Alice's. Can you see Alice's answer?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that the attendees can see them all, though. So from Alice, she says our reading software has built-in data collection that we are using in our reading lab. Reed says yes, she probes at least twice per week, then charted. He says data tracker on an iPad. Janine has told us what CAPS means. It's comprehensive autism planning sheets, data taken over the course of the daily schedule for each IEP goal. And Brenda says she uses pre-tests and quarterly tests to get percentages.
Great. Instruction is a very systematic process. Certainly there is data collection within Classroom Suite. There's process for that there as well. So while the student is engaged in with Classroom Suite, their performance is in the software. It teaches how to use the computer and the adaptive devices per step. Sometimes we forget that not every student, when they come to the computer, knows how to turn on every computer and use the mouse proficiently and navigate around to get what they want to. Certainly the task analysis can help with that, but there needs to be some direct instruction and explicit instruction about using the computer and the adaptive devices. I sometimes recommend that this process of learning and using technology be included as an IEP goal for students. I've had some people tell me that they typically don't do that. They want to just focus on the content, and I appreciate that. But students need to learn how to not only need to how to acquire access to the technology they're using. So we need to focus on that as well. We also teach them how to use it, and we provide explanation, modeling, and feedback to them constantly. And that's a really important strategy as well, so that students know, what to do differently to access the parts where they need to go. We also have students with multiple opportunities to access the computer and the software, and identifying those throughout the day, throughout the week, is as well. Develop a checklist of skills necessary for the student to access and navigate the computer, and then check off those skills as acquiring them and using the computer and the software. And support, so if the student has questions, it can be addressed and answered quickly. Feedback on the acquisition of the targeted skills after they've used the computer. So we have at least three data points before we use the computer, and then when we think that they might have mastered that strategy within the computer, then we want to transfer that to outside of the computer, so that they can generalize those skills across settings. Collecting at least 3 data points, similar types of context as were collected of the software. Another important is we know that students need to not only multiple opportunities, but some of our students need a lot of repetition a day to really acquire those skills. And we want that repetition, but we also want to provide it to facilitate the skill activities, so we can give them an opportunity to repeat the use of the skill, but across a variety of contexts. That would be an important thing. Some potential barriers that you all might identify to using computer-aided instruction. No. Janine writes, teacher buy-in has been problematic. To feel comfortable. So do you feel like it's teacher buy-in and instruction on the software, or use of this strategy?
We're waiting for Janine's answer. Kathy says time. Lack of individualized technology. Brenda says the computer-aided instruction requires more work for the teacher. Catherine's response, particular strategies.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people say that to me when I go in and I present my data sheets when I talk about collecting data. Where they need to meet the individual needs. That's a really big questions is, one, getting that particular software that's going to meet everyone's needs, and then, like you guys, is getting the training on the particular software. What I in Classroom Suite in particular is that because the templates are already there, it's pretty, it's sort of a, install kind of program I've found. But as teachers gain facility with the software, they can do the customization, the activities as they need. And it can be time-consuming. I too that what also is time-consuming is not taking data and not doing the customization. Here's why. If we don't ever truly know how a student is progressing toward a specific goal, and our students, the incremental. And the only way to document that incremental progress is through data collection procedures. So, we run the risk of being repetitive and not informing our practice if we don't have time to do that. So I like what somebody doing about data taken over the course of the daily schedule. A lot of times I use an infused skills grid, which was by Doug Fisher several years ago, to provide with a guide on what goal for which student during which activity are we collecting data today. And it just helps to remind them that across students and across goals, I need to be collecting this. And that particular is helpful to me, and I know some of the teachers that I work with in identifying those spots.
Yeah, Marilyn sent a chat to me privately saying access in the classroom will help. Michelle says time needed for learning the software, to hardware that supports the software, time needed for training, setup, teacher, and student buy-in. Sounds like a lot of time. And you see the others, don't you, Dr. Orlando?
I do.
Okay. Could I just, if I could just interject something a little bit? Time is definitely something that none have, whether we're teaching or not. But for Alice and others who are interested in identifying the templates that we have in Classroom Suite, we do have some options for you, and that's we do recorded webinars on how to do the modification that will help with some training. And I can address that another time, or especially in the follow-up email that comes, but I just wanted to let you know that there are resources available.
And I know that, at least in the state of Florida, we have whole agencies who are to the role of professional development in the area of technology for teachers who teach students with disabilities, and teachers who are education teachers but who have students with disabilities in their classrooms. It is a big focus, is doing instruction on the use of the variety of software that's available. Stay here.
I think that all the participants get to see these chats. If you're going to send a chat message, and if you'd like everybody to see your comments, choose all participants from the pull-down menu in the Send To. If you see Send To, click on that down arrow, and you can choose all participants to send your comments to. If you prefer to keep it private, you're more than welcome to send it just to host and presenter or to all panelists, and that will keep it private. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of it, Catherine talked about having to feel comfortable, and I agree with that sometimes it is, you don't really feel comfortable with a particular strategy, particularly since, sometimes we're special education teacher, you're the lone wolf in your school, and there's a lot of people to talk to about using a particular strategy. But for the particular area of autism, there's lots of resources for people. And one of these is the Center on Professional Development in the area of Autism Spectrum Disorders. They have posted the autism internet modules. This particular strategy, along with many others, is posted in a way that you can just download all 14 steps, and you can download the data sheets to help you to do that. And it's very user-friendly, and it really can help you, I think, practice that's needed to feel you're proficient at using a particular strategy, because if you don't ever do it, you're never going to do it. And the instructions that are provided are pretty explicit, I think.
could just Alice did tell me privately that she doesn't have all participants in her list, and that may be possible. So continue to send chats in any manner you feel comfortable, and we will make sure that we repeat them. Thank you.
So I also talked about that there will be follow-up when you leave until you're called back to a particular school, and certainly follow-up is a very important in the area of professional development, and it looks like many of you are in that role of providing professional development to your schools. And I know that coaching is, of all of the strategies used, coaching is one of the best strategies for helping to implement these particular types of practices in their classrooms. So for coaching, but I personally that to be very beneficial for teachers if I can come back and repeatedly and model and give them practice and provide feedback about using a particular strategy. The likelihood that they'll use it again significantly increases. Questions, comments? Went through this quickly, but I think if you look at the white paper, all of these are described in the white paper. I'll have access to that. Is that Debbie?
Yeah, the white paper will be sent out with a follow-up email that will be sent out in a couple of days. Just watch your email inbox for an email from IntelliTools.
Get that white paper, these steps will be identified, and how it is that Classroom Suite addresses them will be identified in the chart along with that for each one of the that have been addressed in the early learning templates as well as the reading, writing, and math templates. There's some redundancy built in, but it's sort of I think a quick and dirty way to look at how you could use these strategy with each one of these templates. Go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I've used these strategies myself and taught them to a number of teachers and to be very effective in help to document and to also exactly what is the issue and getting to students either to use the software, access the software, or to become knowledgeable in the content.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Orlando? Can you Janine's question, Dr. Orlando?
I'm not aware of specific research that's been done in Classroom Suite with students who have a. There is some research on the IntelliTools website that addresses some research that's been conducted with Classroom Suite and into the 5 areas of reading. You can look at that, but I'm not aware of research that specifically looks at Classroom Suite who have ASD.
Not specifically, but we have a lot of research which we can look into, Janine, and we will get back to you privately about this to help with your justifying for buying a site license of Classroom Suite. I'll have Suzanne Fite. Suzanne Fite is an attendee here on the webinar, but she's not a panelist. I don't know, Suzanne, if you have anything that you can add to this, and you could send something through the chat window about research. Suzanne, probably better than anybody. anything?
I don't see her yet either.
No, no. So, any comments? To mention some reference materials, which again will be provided in that follow-up email, and your email address as well, so that if you need to ask any questions after the webinar that came up after we leave you, feel free to send them to me, and I will make sure that they get answered. Suzanne's comment, she says she doesn't know anything specific about the research, but she does know of many cases where it is with unique learning system. For those of you familiar with unique learning system, we do offer, we do them a collaboration with Unique in that the activities, the paper-based activities for unique learning system have been turned into class suite activities, so the students can use them either on the computer or paper-based. And again, information about that will be provided for those of you who are not familiar with it. From Suzanne, we have from she's learning the program and she wants more information on how to use for her students to get the most benefit. Is there a previous webinar to this one? Yes, we have quite a few webinars that we've had on how to use Classroom Suite, and we'll include, there's a link you can get on, go to our archive, and you can browse through that to see which webinars will interest you the most. And again, that will be provided in the email. It's easier to do that than to go through it here. Suzanne comments, a large portion of the students who are using Unique Learning System with Classroom Suite are students in AA classrooms, and she recommends primary skills builders to add the anecdotal data collection. Comments? Questions? Well, I think we are have pretty much covered everything. If there are no questions, this is great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And yes, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And as I said, keep watch out for that follow-up email. It will contain everything you need to know. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.